Welcome to a Telltale Books video. My name is Greg, and I'm continuing my H.G. Wells series with this video, covering everything I can get my hands on by Wells in order of publication. And this is the 18th story on my H.G. Wells list, titled A Family Elopement. A Family Elopement was published in St. James's Gazette for March 3rd, 1894. So we are still ahead of the time machine, and this story is not science fiction or fantasy or horror. This is what you would call literary fiction, I guess. It's just a short story, a very short story. Wells was keeping his stories very brief, almost like O. Henry stories at this time. Not quite short enough to be called flash fiction, but very short. In a family elopement, you have a man and his mistress deciding to elope, even though the guy's still married. And they head to the train station and they run into his wife and the guy that she's seeing on the side, because they are heading out to do the same thing. And so they get on the train together, and the story ends by them having a nice conversation, small talk. Kind of a comedy. A little better than most of the other stories I've read by Wells at this stage in his career, but still not incredible. I mean, it kind of reflects Wells's ideas about marriage and sex. He was kind of in favor of open arrangements where he at least got to go and have all the sex he wanted on the side. Kind of a jerk that way. But I think he was honest about it. Not sure. Anyway, in the story, it's like this is something that in other marriages would just be a total meltdown with big fights, lots of screaming, possibly even somebody ending up in the hospital or dead. In this story, they all just kind of accept it and go on, which is what makes it kind of humorous. It throws you for a loop that they just that they are taken aback, but then they just kind of go, oh, well, and they sit down together and have small talk. And that's really it. I don't think it's a great story. Um, I would only recommend it to people like me that absolutely have to read everything Wells wrote. Otherwise, it's not what we know H.G. Wells for. I mean, even his later social novels, um, they were much better works than this little story was. Now, of course, I did not get a hold of a copy of St. James's Gazette because that's probably acid-filled paper that's crumbled to dust by now. You can find it, well, you can find it for free online, I'm sure, because it's public domain, but you can also find it in the complete short stories of H.G. Wells. And as I've said before, this particular edition of the complete short stories is the closest thing to complete that you're going to find. All the others are going to lack quite a few stories. Even though they say complete, there were stories that were discovered after they were published, and so they're not complete. And even this one, there's one story I know of that was not long ago published in the Strand magazine that was not known of when this book was published, so it's not in here. So, have you ever read A Family Elopement? If so, leave your comments. I'd like to hear them. What'd you think of this story? Is it good? Is it not good? Did you think it was funny? Did you laugh at it? And otherwise, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and come on back. I've got a lot more H.G. Wells coming up. We're going to get to some exciting ones very, very quickly. Number 19 is another short story, another short love comedy, romantic comedy. But after that, number 20 is the first version, actually titled The Time Machine, second version of the story, the first one being one that we already covered, titled The Chronic Argonauts. So we're going to get into the Time Machine, but we're going to get into the first version titled The Time Machine that was published. It's significantly different than the novel that we're familiar with. It's shorter and missing a lot of the stuff that we know from the book. It'll be interesting. I'm going to get into that in detail. If you've never read any of the Time Machines, I would suggest going out and reading those before you come and watch my video on it, because it's going to be spoiled completely. All right. I've talked about the standard edition of the Time Machine in the past. I do want to redo that video because that was kind of an unfortunate experiment outdoors. I want to try and redo that one when I get to that edition. But I'm going to talk a lot about this edition and what is there specifically, and how it wraps up, and probably get into a little bit of what's not there. So I hope you'll come back and join me for all that and all the other videos we do. Emily will be joining me for some. We just put up today, as I record this, a little ahead of time from when I schedule it. We just put up today a video on Good Omens, and of course we've already had some nasty comments. Now, that was something that we planned well in advance of the breaking of the news about Neil Gaiman. I bought copies of the book, and we were scheduled to read it. And then this news broke, and I said to Emily, well, are you okay with this? Because she is an adamant feminist and very much against any kind of sexual wrongdoing, sexual assault. She is a victim herself. So I thought I better make sure she's going to be okay with going ahead and reading stuff by Gaiman, because she has been a really big fan of Neil Gaiman and has read a lot of his work. And so that whole situation was very unfortunate. And I thought, I better make sure Emily's going to be cool with it and not going to have issues with Neil Gaiman. So I talked to her, and she said, no, let's go ahead and do it. And in reading the book, we both discovered that the book it seems more Terry Pratchett than Neil Gaiman. And so we kind of reviewed it on that angle, that even though Neil Gaiman's name is on it, it's more of a Terry Pratchett book. So if you have issues with what Gaiman is doing, I think you could still justify reading Good Omens, because there is a huge contribution made by Terry Pratchett, and it feels like one of his books. So anyway, we put that up. That's an interesting one. We are going to go ahead and review other books by both Pratchett and Gaiman in the future, because there's a lot of books by both of those authors that have impacted the fantasy field. And so no matter what kind of wrongdoing Gaiman has done, he has already changed the genre for our future. And we can't ignore that. Whatever kind of schmuck he is in his personal life, he still has made a significant contribution to the fantasy genre. And we can't just erase that. We don't believe in the cancel culture. We believe that, okay, we don't like the guy, but we're still going to enjoy his books. So, yeah, I already got some some nasty comments on that one. People that think that we shouldn't be covering Neil Gaiman at all because of what's going on. And it's like, knew this was going to happen. Um, so that's kind of a bummer right now. But, other authors have also been schmucks, including H.G. Wells. He cheated on every one of it. He had multiple wives, and he had multiple wives, and he cheated on every one of them. And he openly spoke that he felt men should be allowed to do so. He believed in free love. So, his stories are still good. It's just his personal life is, he had kind of a crappy attitude towards women. Come on back for all the videos we're going to do. We're going to do lots of authors, both controversial authors and non-controversial authors. We're going to do a series. This is something Emily suggested like a couple of years ago and sent me a list. And we've just never gotten around to it. I thought it was a good idea, but, just went on the back burner. And now with what's going on, Neil Gaiman has not been convicted of anything, and he has not been put in prison, and he probably won't be. But there are other authors that actually did hard time, and we still read their works. So why do we do that? And what are these works? And do they have value? Does a convict have value writing literature? Somebody that has been convicted and has been found to be morally corrupt by a society. In some cases, of course, they aren't morally corrupt. They were just on the wrong side of politics or the wrong religion. And we'll be digging into those issues and going through some of those. I think we're going to start with Oscar Wilde's De Profundis, because that seems kind of relevant to what's going on right now with Neil Gaiman, although a little different. But it was a different era with different ethics and morals, and so they convicted him. Anyway, and it also, Emily and I live in a town in Wisconsin where a man was arrested, tried, convicted, sent to prison for a number of years, and then they found out he was the wrong guy. He didn't do it. Somebody else did it. It was a rape. Somebody else was the perpetrator, and he was innocent. They convicted an innocent man and kept him in prison for a number of years. Okay? So that's why we got to be careful with these things. We can't just go convicting people because of hearsay on the internet. We got to give them due process of law. We have to follow the laws. We have to follow the process. And even then, we could get it wrong. And so we have to be careful whose names we slander and whose lives we destroy by labeling them predators when we don't have the proper knowledge to be doing so. Okay, so off the soapbox and on to the stories. Please come back. Like I say, the next H.G. Wells number 19 is In the Modern Vein, an unsympathetic love story. That was published the next week in 1894. I hope you'll join me for that. Till next time.